Hello, guys. Welcome to our automations webinar. I see the people are still coming in, so welcome. I'm really glad to see so many of you joining us today. Before we get started, maybe it would be good to kind of check if we are good to go when it comes to technical stuff. So if you guys can hear me, can you please just type in that you can hear me in the chat section, just so we can see if we are good to go. There is a slight delay in the webinar, so yeah, okay, I can already see some comments pouring in. That's great. Awesome. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for confirming that you can hear me. That means that we are good to go. We can get started. Okay, so as you guys know, automations are finally live. I'm really happy to say that and to share this with you, and that's why we decided to kind of make this webinar and show you how automations work, maybe give you some examples, and basically get you started more quickly so you can start automating your workflow immediately. Okay, so as you maybe know, my name is Jovan. I'm the head of customer success here at Infinity. I will be facilitating this webinar, so basically I will be here to help Marco out. Marco will be giving you the walkthrough, and in the end also helping you with the questions. So if you can leave the questions in the Q&A, that would be really good, so we can keep track of all the questions and maybe also write them down so we can answer them later at the end of the webinar. So as I said, Marco here with me today. He is the senior customer success agent. You probably know him. So he will actually be walking you through automations. And I think if Marco, you are good to go, we can get started.
Excellent. Thank you, Joanna. Thank you for the nice introduction. And hello, everybody. Thank you for joining in as well. I'm definitely excited to show you what we have to offer with our automations. There's so much to cover. So before we actually start, let me just remind you, this webinar is actually going to be recorded. So if you miss it for some reason, don't worry, you'll get it on your email within next 24 or 48 hours. So it will be there for you to watch it again. Of course, since I don't want to waste a lot of your time, let's focus on our agenda for today. So when it comes to our webinar, today we'll cover what are Infinity's automations and how you can benefit from them. So that's one of the things we're going to talk about today, how to create, edit, and delete them, together with some of the most common use cases like reminders, recurring items, and if this, then that automations. Of course, during the webinar, I'll also teach you how you can actually create those automations by using triggers and actions, and we'll be packing all of that inside some of the use cases that we have to show you. So, of course, let's touch upon the very first point. What are Infinity's automations? So when it comes to our automations, there are sets of rules you'll be able to create to actually automate your workflow. Whatever that might be, whether it's your process, whether that's something that you're trying to organize, your tasks, really anything. It will definitely help you to set up reminders, if this then that rules, and many other processes that will help you reduce manual work so that you don't have to click all the time or move items or anything similar. For example, you'll be able to update them, assign tasks, remind your team of important deadlines, and so much more. Of course, that covers the very first option over here. So now we can actually get started with the walkthrough itself and all the practical aspects of it. So I'll share my screen. Just give me a couple of seconds and we'll start right there. So hopefully now you can actually see my screen. Let's just give it a few seconds. And if you can, just leave a comment in the chat section that you can actually see my screen so that I can proceed further. Of course, remember that all this it will be available to you after the webinar itself. You'll get the recording as well, so no need to worry about it. Excellent. Thank you. I can see the comments coming in now. Excellent. All right, so we'll start from the very beginning. Now, to get to see our automations or to start experimenting with them, you need to open one of your boards. And in your boards, in the top left side of your board, you should see the button called Automations. You could click on it and it will open a completely new pop-up window. But if you don't see it, remember that you might not have the permission to actually see that button. So In that case, ask the workspace owner or the admin of this workspace or this board to actually allow you to manage permissions. He can do that by clicking on the board manager, clicking on permissions tab, scrolling all the way to the right, and allowing you to manage permissions. Once they give it to you, you'll be able to view, create, edit, and delete those automations. So you'll be able to do everything. Now, once that's covered, let's cover the automation button. Once you click on it, you get to see three different menus over here. It's Browse, Manage, and Usage. In Browse, you get to see some of the pre-made templates we made for you. You can use any of them to achieve many different use cases. And we have many different ones. For example, reminders, if this then that, if date arrives, every time period, and update item. If you click on one of them, you'll get those templates and you can simply use one of them. But remember, you're not limited to using only these templates. You can always create your own automation, so you can be the master and the designer of your own automation. In the Manage section over here, you'll see all the previous automations that you created. You can, of course, click on it to edit it. You can go back. You can turn it off if you want, or you can completely delete it. I'll delete this one since I don't need it and I want to focus on other elements of it. So let's remove this one, and that would be it. The usage button or section is something that you shouldn't worry at the moment. We just released this feature and we won't put any limitations for now. We first want to understand and see how you actually use our automations and how many you create so that we can decide on a number that's going to be fair to you and us together. Now, since we covered that, let's go back to our use cases over here. We have a couple of different folders, and in here you can see tasks, you can see ticket flows, brainstorming space, and archive. Now, one of the most common use cases when it comes to automations is reminders. And you would probably want to get reminders when your tasks are due. In that case, in here, we do have some of the tasks, 10 different tasks, and most importantly, we have a due date attribute that allows us or tells us when these tasks should be finished or completed by. But before, in Infinity, you weren't able to get any kind of notifications when that date arrives. For now, that has changed. We have automations and we can actually create those reminders. So for the very first example, we are going to create a reminder automation. So let's open it. Let's click on create an automation and let's start from the beginning. Now, in this menu, I'll cover everything related to our triggers, actions, and what one automation can be. So first things first, always remember to name your automation. If you forget to name it, you won't be able to click Save Automation. So as a precaution, let's name this one Reminders. And okay, so now we know that we are actually creating a reminder for us. And the very first step or element of our automations are our triggers. In here, you can click on Add a Trigger and you'll see many different options. Triggers are basically an element that needs to happen in order for this automation to fire, whether that's an attribute value changes, if that date arrives, every time period, button, maybe form submitted, item created, whatever the case might be. Of course, that depends on what you're trying to do. Since we are working with reminders right now, we are going to pick our date arrives trigger. So I can click on it, and now in here, we can decide what that attribute is going to be. So what attributes are we looking at in order to get those reminders? If you remember earlier, I mentioned due date over here in my table. So I can select that one, due date. Now we are focusing on the due date attribute, and with that, we get a couple of different options in here. So we have before and after element. Before obviously means remind me before the task is due, and after we can use that element if our tasks are overdue. So if we are late with our tasks, if we did not complete them in time, so we can send us reminder telling us to finish it or complete it. For now, we'll focus on before, and together with that, we can now decide if we want to remind us minutes before the task, hours, days, or weeks before. Now, minutes and hours are also a part of this trigger, but if your due date doesn't have a time frame or time field in it, you won't be able to see these two. Since I also can see minutes, hours, and all the other options. Now, Usually, when it comes to our reminders, we would like to get reminded a couple of days before the actual date arrives. So in here, I can set this reminder to come 3 days before the actual due date. Now, once we set that up, we can add other conditions, or we can simply add an action or the desired result that we want to get from this automation. So I can click on add an automation and add action, my apologies. And in here, we can decide what that action is going to be. That can be a leave a comment, create a completely new folder, maybe create a new item, move that specific item somewhere, send a notification, or update an item itself. Now, since we're talking about reminders, it's of course obvious that we are going to use send notification. Let's select it. And now in here, we can decide who we want to send these notifications to. All right, so we can select all members, which basically means all the members inside this specific board. We can select all watchers. So if we have many different watchers onto a specific item, we can say, okay, inform or remind only them. Or we can focus on all members added to a member attribute, which is essentially the best option when it comes to tasks or projects, because you would be reminding people who are responsible for that specific task. But if that's not something you want, you can, of course, select a specific member that you want to remind. And in here, you can select Go to Dogs, Marco, Phil, or whatever other members you have in here. Now, besides that, you can, of course, create a custom notification. So when it comes to reminders, you would probably say something like this: your task is in 3 days, is due in 3 days, something like that. So we can always use our variables over here. If I click on item name, that will pull the item's name, and we will know what task we're talking about. And then we can add some text: is due in 3 days, for example. Now we can save this. Once it's saved, that specific person or anyone inside this folder will actually get the reminder 3 days before the actual date arrives. If we click Save Automation, now we have saved it, and we can leave it in there. So if the time arrives 3 days before a specific date in here, that specific person who is assigned to this task would get notification inside Infinity, so top right corner, and together with that, he would also get an email notification and a push notification. So if you have our desktop app, or you have our email, or actually you have our mobile app or desktop app, you would get notifications, push notifications through that as well. Now, when it comes to other elements, of course, you might want to focus on just one folder. Maybe you have due dates in some other folders or in some other use cases that you're organizing in your board, and maybe you would want to stick these automations only to this specific folder. But besides that, you might also want to get reminded only on high priority tasks. So now you can decide what you want to do. For example, in my case, now I want to organize a specific automation that will remind me only if my tasks are actually high priority and only if they are in this specific folder called Support Success Tasks. Now, I can go back to automations, I can create a completely new one, or I can click on Manage and I can edit this specific automation. So I can click on it, and now we have a very third element of our automations, which are conditions. And in here, we can decide or customize our automation further. And that automation will continue only if these conditions are met. So I want the task to be in a very specific priority, which is high for me. And I want to say that this automation works only inside this specific folder. So in here, I can click on New Filter, and I can select our source folder attribute, and I can say where source folder is my Support Success Tasks folder. So now, essentially, with this specific reminder automation, we are getting a due date. We are getting a reminder when date arrives, and that date is on due date 3 days before the actual date, with the tasks that have a high priority set to it and that are contained or set in this specific folder. So I can save an automation, and I would get notifications only for these 3 items and when the date arrives, of course. That's when it comes to our reminders. Those are the most common use cases that you would be using, but together with that, you can also focus on other things. For example, if we want to decide or create an if this then that automation, we can do a lot more. For example, in our use case over here with tasks, maybe I want to remind or notify someone if the task moves to a review stage. So I can definitely do that. So I can say, if my task is in review, notify my manager or my team leader. So that's definitely possible. And one of the common use cases or requested use cases from you guys. So let's start building that one through our automations. Let's create a completely new one by clicking on create an automation. And in here, we can start with that automation. Remember, always first name your specific automation. So I can name it in review. That's my automation. And in here now, we can focus on some other triggers that we have in here. For example, let it be attribute value changes. I can click on it, and now I can decide what that attribute is. If you remember, we were talking about status. So in here, I'll select our task status, and I can add now conditions. And I can say where that specific status is in review, I would like something to happen. And for that to happen, I need to add an action. So let's click on it and let's send a notification, or in this specific case, let's assign our team leader to it. So we can use our action update an item, and in here, we can assign specific member. In this case, that would be our team leader or an admin or anyone who is above us in the hierarchy, or someone superior in our team. Let that be Phil Johnson. So now what we are essentially doing is we are creating a automation that when a specific task has an in review status, it will assign our colleague or our team leader to it. But besides that, you're not limited to adding only one action. If you can see here, there is a button to add another action. So we can do that as well. So I can click on add a reminder, add an action, and in here, we can leave a comment as well. In here, we can now use the variables assignee where our team leader is, and he would get a notification and a comment mentioning, hey, can you let us know if this is good? Question mark. So now, whenever we move something to in review stage, our team leader or admin will be assigned to that specific task, and he'll get this comment as well. I'll save an automation and I'll show you that in action right now. So we can keep it in a table view, or we can move it to status. And in here, if I drag and drop any of these items in review, you'll see things happening. So let's move it in review. Let's watch the icon over here. Once the automation triggers, the person should change. You can see that Phil is now assigned to it. I can extend this item, and in the comments, if you remember, I added a comment. We can see that Phil Johnson, hey, can you let us know if this is good? So he also gets a comment. He can come back in here. We can respond and let us know if we can simply continue further with this task or project that we are working on. If we switch back to our table view, we can do that also here. So let's change this one in review, and you'll see changes happen instantly, almost instantaneously. So an assignee changed, an automation was executed, and now we have our use case. And in addition to this, you might want to continue this process. So for example, if my team leader comes back to this item and he says, hey, Marco, you can simply finish or complete this task. If that's okay, please move it to done. Once it's moved to done, now we know that this task is completed, but maybe we wouldn't want it to be here. So at the end of the month or at the end of the week, we would want our team leader or our admin to complete this task by using our complete checkbox attribute. So we can create a completely new automation to automate that process. So let's create an automation, a new one again. So click on create an automation, and let's say archive. So that we can complete that we can move our completed items to archive. In that case, we're going to be using some attributes and triggers. So let's create a completely new trigger where we are going to select attribute value changes, and we can select that specific attribute called completed. which is a checkbox. So we can use it to further develop our automation. Now we can add conditions. We will select that where completed attribute is actually checked, and for the precaution or to be safe, we want to use another filter, which is going to be our status, so that we know that our status is done. In that case, we are not going to be able to move some other item that's not done accidentally to archive or anywhere else. So that's fairly simple and a fairly standard procedure in this case. Together with that, we can add another action, which is going to be move item. So now we are introducing you to a completely new action. So let's use move item, and now in it we get to decide what we want to do. We can select the destination folder where we want our item to end up. So I can click destination folder, select archive September, and I can use move and merge if I want those items to keep all their relevant data. So that can simply happen. Now I can add another action to this if I want to. So for example, if I want to notify that specific person that their task is completed, I can do that, but it might not be important in this specific case. So I'll keep it simple. Save automation, and now we have created that automation. Now, if our team leader comes and he sees that specific task that has done, he can click on completed, check it, and this item should now move itself to our archive folder. Let's give it a couple of seconds, and it's gone. It's now in our archive folder, and it's here. Go through on hold ticket section. So that's how you can use our automations to actually speed up your process, save time, and focus on what you actually need to be working. Now, of course, we covered two different automations. Now, I have a question for you. Would you be able to tell us if this was actually something that you were looking for? Or let me ask you a better question. Have you had the chance to experiment with automation so far? Have you created any of the automations that can help you? Let me know in the chat. I'll be looking at the chat right now. I can see answers coming in. Excellent. I'm glad that that's something that helps, Sherry. Awesome, awesome. All right, of course, this is just the beginning of it. We do have other use cases, but we can, focus on other things. Now, diff needed info. Excellent, excellent. Hopefully you learned something new so far. So let's move on. Let's move on with the second use case, or the third one that I can show you, and that would be in our brainstorming space. So in our brainstorming space, we have a very specific use case, and I'm actually really excited to show you this because it also involves a completely new attribute, and you will be able to click on something to achieve that. So let me start from the very beginning, and let me explain the use case in here. So in here, in our brainstorming space, we as customer support agents or our colleagues usually come in here to post or create their suggestions, whether those are ideas, suggestions, how to improve our process, how to help our customers, what to introduce to our customers, and similar. So in here, you can definitely see that we have three different ideas that we can use in here, and they're nothing else but ideas in this folder. And we would need someone to come in here, check this, and approve this specific idea to become a task or to actually start working on it. So we can do that in a few different ways. Previously, you would probably go into supports, create a completely new task, and then add all the info, or you would be dragging and dropping the item in here, which can kind of create a mess. But now we have something that's completely different. And let me introduce you to our new trigger and new automation that will allow you to automate this process. And it's called button, which allows you to click on it and it will instantly turn this idea into a task. So that's what we're trying to achieve in here. For example, let's name the automation itself idea to tasks. So the idea is to move those ideas into tasks. And in here, now we can simply create our use case. We have selected our trigger, which is our button trigger, and we can add a simple action. That action would actually be to move an item. Even though we covered move an item, that's fine. This is a completely different use case, and I believe that it can be useful in many different cases. So let's select the destination folder once again. Remember, we are currently in brainstorming space, and we want to move those ideas or suggestions into our tasks. So the destination folder would be tasks. We can use move and merge, or we can keep it like this. I'll keep it like this for now. And together with this, we can add something special. For example, since these are ideas and we have assignees to them, maybe we would like to inform our users that they can actually start working on that task, or that their idea is going to become a reality inside Infinity. So let's leave a comment for them as well. In here, we can again mention the assignee by using our variables. Let's click on it and it will say, John, Marco, or Go to Dogs, hey, this is an excellent idea. Let's make it a reality. So now, whenever we approve this idea or this suggestion, that specific person will get a notification saying exactly this. So it's an excellent way of doing it. So let me save the automation first, and let me introduce you the second part of this automation. Now, if you remember, I already mentioned that we have another attribute added inside Infinity. So let's add it. Let's click on Add a Column, and in here we can create a completely new attribute. That attribute will be button. So we can select it, and we can actually now, first of all, name it. Since we need approval from a team leader or from a CEO or from an admin of this board to move these items or ideas to tasks, let's name this attribute Move It. And of course, now we need to connect the automation we created with this specific button. So I can select ideas to tasks, which is the automation we created recently. And in here, we can say approved, so that our admin, our CEO, or our team leader approve the idea. And we can change the color to orange, for example. I can click Save now, and the button is here now. Now, all you have to do to achieve this automation or to trigger it is to simply click it. And now the use case is, okay, we have ideas in here, and let's click on it to create a task out of it instantly. So if I click on it, you'll see something happen. The idea is not here anymore. It's in our support success tasks. It became a task, and our friend got a comment in here, Phil Johnson in this case, hey, this is an excellent idea. Let's make it a reality. So in that sense, or in that case, you're automating your process, you're approving something for your colleagues, and you're letting them know that they can start working on it and implement it in Infinity or in whatever you're trying to organize, essentially. Now, besides that, buttons can be used for many different things. Our developers are using them for different use cases. One of those use cases is that if they have tasks that are low priority, they might want to move that to a backlog. So they can click on a button and that task can move to another folder, which is a backlog for them. And then they can pick it up in the future. I can see your question, David. Unfortunately, changing a color, a shape of the button is not possible at the moment, but the color is always changeable. You can always change it. So in here, you can even choose from the color picker, use your custom color, add a code in it if you want, click select, save, and the color changes. So that's definitely possible. Now, of course, since we covered this, can you tell me a bit more of, let me ask you a question. So since the release of our automations, is there something specific that you would like to achieve? What's the biggest use case you would want to achieve without automation? So feel free to mention them in here so that we can get some kind of feedback and maybe we can present it now or create videos for you in the future. So feel free to say that or to mention that. And you're welcome, David, of course. Reminders were the most important. Yeah, actually, we did check the statistics so far, and we saw that reminders were the most used automation so far, even though it's been only 24 hours. So, yeah, definitely something that was well needed inside Infinity. Yeah, excellent. Reminder for birthdays, Emmanuel. Yeah, I'll try to figure that out and maybe send you an email later on. But of course, thank you so much for all the questions. Let's move on with the use case here. So the very next thing I would like to show you is that maybe you would like to create some kind of general automations, or let's say general reminders in this case. For example, use case, a typical use case here would be to get reminders for our, let's say, monthly meetings or weekly meetings. So in that case, we can create something with our automations. In here, we can simply click on create an automation. We can name it, let's say, weekly reminder. And in here, we can use a trigger called every time period. Now, this is not exactly a recurring item or recurring task, but it's something that can help you get recurring reminders or something to create every time period or something to happen in every time period. Essentially, let's click on it and let's show you what it can do. Every time period, we can select here daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly. So we would want something to happen every day, every week, every month, or every year. So since we're talking about weekly reminder over here, let's select weekly. And now we can decide on what days we want to get this specific reminder on. Since we have team meetings every Monday, I'll leave that on Monday and remove all these other options. So in here, you can see every Monday at 1 in the morning, let's change that to 12 p.m. We need to get a notification or a reminder. So we can add an action, and in here, that action can be a completely new item, or we can send a notification, which is simple enough. So we can click on send notification, and in here, since this is a board for our whole team, we can remind all our members inside this board. And in here, we can create a custom notification. That notification can be, hey, we have a time team meeting at 12. So that can be it, of course. Besides that, you can do many other things. You can select the current date and really anything that you need. And we can simply save automation. Now, every Monday and this specific time, we will get a notification about this. And at 12 o'clock, we can then proceed with the meeting, get together, talk about KPIs, what happened in the previous week, and so much more. Now, of course, you might have seen a lot of triggers over here. So even though that this is the very first release of our automation and the very first version, don't forget that we'll be working on them, we'll be improving our automations, and we'll be introducing you to a completely new set of triggers. In the future, you also might be able to use APIs and webhooks with our automations. Together with that, you'll also get a completely new trigger called recurring tasks. So things are coming. For now, we're trying to see and understand what you're trying to do with them, if that's working for you, and so much more. But I digress. Let's get back to our use case. And in here, we have a ticket flow. And of course, we have a specific form created for this folder. And in here, the use case is for us support guys is that whenever someone reports a ticket, or if you do that by our public roadmap form, you can actually pick specific attributes and labels in here to tell us what you want to achieve or what you want to report, or if you have something interesting to suggest. So of course, you can pick and decide that. And according to those rules and attributes and values that you selected, you can remind some of us inside Infinity. So let me show you how that could be done inside Infinity and with our automations. Even though that this is an internal form, it can still be used for that specific case. So the very first thing I'll do, I'll start with the new automation. I'll click on create an automation and I'll say if bug, then Marco. So if we receive a bug report or a ticket or an issue report, then mention or assign me to that specific ticket or task. So in here, I'll select a completely new attribute and I'll select form submitted trigger, which will allow us to get those values. Now in here, we can select where our specific form is, which is in our ticket flow folder and a tab called ticket form. In here now, we can add conditions, and I'll now decide what those conditions are. If you remember earlier, I mentioned bugs. So if the ticket type in this case is a bug, I want to be the one responsible for it. So whenever you report or suggest something that has a bug in it, you will, of course, send a notification to me. So I'll send a notification and I'll pick These options select members, and I'll select a specific member. In that specific case, that's me. And in here, we can say now, hey, we have a new bug for you. This is the notification I'll get whenever someone submits or creates a completely new ticket that has a label bug assigned to it. I can now save an automation, and I can now create a ticket for you. This will be a simple example. So for example, login button doesn't work. And we can add many different elements in here. Whatever I click, nothing happens. Don't mind my writings in here, just for an example. We can add some fields. We can say that this ticket is urgent, but most importantly, we would want to select a bug. So we have selected the condition that we actually need for this automation to work. And now we can click submit. Once that's done, we should get a notification inside Infinity top right corner. And in here, I can see, hey, we have a new bug for you. I can click on it, and that will open that specific ticket that you or someone else reported to us. I can check it up, I can pick it up, I can start working on it, and if needed, I can go into comments and mention something to our colleagues, involve our team member, involve our team leader, or anyone else. So that's one of the use cases in here. Now, of course, there are many other ones you can use, especially for collecting leads. Maybe you have an application form so that people can apply for a job or a position at your company, and so much more. But besides that, our automations are really flexible. And I want to touch upon our browse section over here. I know that we went through it really quickly, but let's get back to it for just a moment. In here, you can see some of our pre-made templates. You can, of course, use any of them. Let's say that's every time period. You can select this every time period, create an item, or send a notification to someone. You can click on it and you can further fully customize it. So you're not limited to what the template has to offer. You have the chance to edit, change, update everything that needs to be updated, and to customize it or use it for your own use case. You can essentially adapt it to your own use case, as our templates and everything else inside Infinity. Now, I know that we covered most of the basic things in Infinity and our automations. There might be some other things that we can come up with, but for now, I would much rather focus on our Q&A section in our webinar. So I'll ask Jovana to join me so that we can go through it together, if she is, of course, available and happy to do so.
Of course, Marco. Thank you. That was great.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go back to our slides and the questions. We did receive a lot of questions, and in the chat section as well. So I just want to apologize in advance if we don't cover everything. And there are a lot of questions that are like really long and kind of focused on a specific use case. And this is something that unfortunately we can't cover, each use case during the webinar. We would need to kind of test things out and check things out and see, how something like that would be possible. I hope you understand. And that makes sense. So if you have a specific question that is related to a specific use case, like how can I achieve this? Or is it possible to achieve this and that? Then I would ask you, please, if you can, after the webinar or whenever you have some time, to chat to our agents, support agents, and they will be able to, they will have much more time than we do right now, and they'll be able to kind of test things out and try things out with you, and then tell you if something like that is possible or not. Okay. All right. So we did receive a couple of questions regarding the webinar recording, or is the webinar being recorded? Yes. So I just want to repeat that. So the webinar is being recorded. You will receive a recording after the webinar. There is going to be just some time for the recording to get ready, and then you will receive it via email, so you can go over some things again. Okay, so there is, let me start with the first question that I can see here, Tiago. So do you guys plan to launch a feature to duplicate tasks? I do believe that yes. So I think we're working on the action duplicate items, right? Marco, can you confirm that maybe?
Yes, that is something that we'll be introducing later on from the meeting I have done with Jana. So yes, that's definitely something that's coming in the future.
Right. Excellent. Okay.
Mhm.
So let me see what else I have here. Can we set automations across boards? I'm afraid that's not possible. So right now automations are on the board level. So you will not be able to, let's say, move an item to another board using an automation, for example. Okay, Les is asking that Marco was naming the automations with lowercase, and if that is the only option, no. Like you can name them however you want. Marco just prefers lowercase. Okay. Okay. When it comes to the button, like it is a typical attribute. So the permissions that you have set up for the whole board or for that for a certain user, they'll be able to change I mean, they'll be able to use the button and click the button. Um, okay. All right. Let me see, Marco. If you see a question that you want to answer, please do.
Excellent. I can see a question from Bruce, and it says, "Do date triggers fire when the app is closed?" Absolutely. So everything is going to work as you set it up. So, for example, if that's a reminder, if you're not in the app, you can definitely get a notification. Even if you're offline, uh, you will get a notification once you actually join Infinity. Or if you have the mobile app and that app is open, you'll also get a push notification. So definitely triggers fire when the app is closed as well, depending on what the automation is.
Mm. Yeah. Okay.
That's one of
Let me
them.
see.
Mhm.
Let me see what else do we have. Like, but there are a lot of complex questions, so I'm trying to figure out. Okay. Um,
Mhm.
let me see.
I can
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I can see from Bianca that every time period it can copy an item with automation. So for now, you can't copy an item with a specific automation, but you can definitely create a completely new item that might have the same elements. So you can use create an item action in that case, but in the future with recurring items, you can more certainly achieve many more things.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me see here in the chat section. I think that one person has asked a question about Marco. Can you help me out with this? So
Sure.
he says, I want an automation used for my to-do list. If the
Mhm.
task is not completed, it is moved to the next day.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Okay, so in that case, we would need variables or data attribute to be able to say add a couple of days to that specific task, whether that's 3 days, whether that's one day, whether that's 5 days. Unfortunately, for now, that's not possible. But since I talked to our product manager today, she informed me that we are definitely going to introduce that in the future. It's going to be similar with our formula attribute. Is going to use the same kind of concept, but it is going to be possible in the future. For now, what you can do is simply add a specific date that you want to assign to that specific item. You can say, okay, add 5 days to that specific item, but you can say, okay, set a specific date to that item, update it with that specific date. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. And I just wanted to mention now, I remembered. So everything that you wrote, like all of your questions and suggestions, we're going to go over them later because this is the first version of automations. And we're actually working on improvements as we speak already. So we are planning to add more actions, more triggers, and we're going to take all of your questions and suggestions seriously. So especially if we see something um, reoccurring, if we see some suggestions happening multiple times, then we're definitely gonna discuss them and brainstorm how we can implement that as soon as possible. So just keep that in mind, that if something is not possible at the moment, that doesn't mean that it's never going to be possible. Okay. So while we're at that, so I can see that there is one question from Chris. What if you click the button on the wrong record? Can
Mhm.
it be undone? So I'm afraid that it can't, Marco, unless I don't know some information, but I think that it can't be undone. Like you can, in Marco's example, you would need to kind of go to the folder where the item was moved and bring it back. But yeah, I believe that we don't have the undo sort of option for automations at the moment.
That is actually true. But what you can do while creating that button automation, you can always add a condition that's going to be there as a safety element. So if you happen to click on something that you don't want to be moved, or you want to move those specific items or elements, you can say, okay, if the idea or suggestion is, let's say, in a final draft, depending on the condition you add, you can kind of decide if you want to move that or not. So try experimenting with conditions. That will definitely help you out. That's the best suggestion I can give you right now.
Okay. Can I notify a client to check his board for something I placed on it for him to see? Well, I mean, this can be definitely done if the client is, part of that board, I guess. So you can add them to a reminder or some kind of an automation that Marco was showing you. But I'm not sure if if the client is not a part of that board, if that's something that you were thinking about, then in that case, I don't believe that can be done for now. Okay. Okay, when it comes to third parties, webhooks, and so on, this is like a very common suggestion. So we have already received that suggestion a couple of times yesterday and today. So we have already forwarded that to our development team, and they are already discussing it. So definitely one of the things that we're going to look how to implement, so that you can have an action that is triggered, that's triggering a third-party tool or a webhook or something like that. Okay. Oh yeah, you answered this one from Bruce.
True.
Anything that you're seeing?
I'm just checking right now. As you mentioned earlier, these are really some complex use cases that they want to achieve, and I'm afraid that we don't have a lot of time to cover those right now, especially since we can't show you that, guys, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense to simply answer, click here, do that. But what I would suggest doing is you can always message us via our chat, and our agents will be there to definitely help you out with the use case that you want to try to achieve. So don't be afraid to do so. We'll be there, and we'll try to cover that as needed.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Okay. Again, sending emails to clients from Infinity, it would not be possible just by if the client is not a part of your board. So unfortunately, I'll have to disappoint Željko. I have to disappoint you on this one. All right. So I don't know if Marco mentioned this. I apologize if he did. So when it comes to every time period, you will have more options in the future. Like right now, the options are kind of limited. They are allowing you to create a folder or an item let's say every time, every weekday, every Monday at a certain point or something like that. But this is not a true recurring task functionality, but this is already a trigger that we're working on. So you can rest assured that the real recurring tasks are also coming, but they were just a little bit more challenging for us to implement in the first version. So we're definitely going to implement them in one of the following updates of this feature. Okay.
Excellent. I would also like to notify you guys, or to let you know that if you want to add some kind of suggestions or to discuss with our community about what you can achieve in different use cases, I would like to give you a chance to also join our Facebook group. So if that's something that you want to do, feel free to join it, and we'll make sure to approve all your requests and see what you want to achieve or discuss with us. So that's also a possibility here for us to understand what you're trying to achieve and to potentially implement that in the future if it's not available right now. So let me paste in the link here so that you can click on it and join our Facebook while you're still here.
Yes, for sure. I wanted to do that as well. And one last question here that I'm seeing is, can we use automation to print PDFs? Unfortunately,
Mhm.
this would also require some other functionality that we currently don't have, but it is on our roadmap, and that's something also that I was planning to send you. So we can move on to our resources slide. So yeah, I wanted to also send you our roadmap. Let me just check it out, um, where you can basically see what we're planning, and also, yeah, I'm not sure if, yeah, I think you'll be able to click it. So you'll be able to see what we're planning. I think that most of you guys already know that you can find that information on our roadmap. But another important thing that you can do on our roadmap is use the form to create suggestions. So there is a form on our roadmap where you can add suggestions regarding automations or anything else. But now that we're talking about automations, you'll be able to add those suggestions that I mentioned, that we're going to take them seriously, and people are going to be able to vote on those in the roadmap, which is going to be very important for us to kind of realize which suggestions maybe are getting more traction, which are going to be more popular, and we need to focus on them sooner. So I definitely suggest you do that as well. And Marco has sent you the first link here. So the Help Center. So of course, we covered a lot of things here in this webinar, but I think that in our Help Center, we have a lot more information, detailed instructions, step-by-steps that you can use to kind of go over that and create your automations more easily. Okay, so that's pretty much that. And yeah, okay, getting the question again about the video being recorded. Yes, Daniel, don't worry about it. So you will be able to rewatch it if you need to. So the webinar recording is going to be available and ready after, let's say, a few hours after the webinar, until it gets ready. And yeah, so I just wanted to mention again, maybe for the end of the webinar, that there are probably some questions that we missed right now, because it's a little bit chaotic in the chat and Q&A. I'm sorry about that. But definitely, if you didn't get an answer right now, we're sorry, but you can write to our chat support. You know that we are available for you there. So the person who is on our chat will be able to help you out with that and test everything out. Or if something that you need is not possible, we will create a ticket, and then we can test it out or forward it to our development team. Okay. All right. I think, Marco, if you don't have anything else to add, if I maybe missed something.
Yeah, I can see a comment from Just Events reminding us about the string of characters we can use for big markers. So thank you for helping us with that as well. But regarding everything else, I think we covered what we can for today. And of course, as mentioned, and as Jovana mentioned, you can always, but I mean always, chat with us, send us an email, and we'll try to help you as much as we can. That's what we are there for. And by all means, do that.
Exactly. Okay, so I guess then we can wrap it up. I hope this was helpful. But if you need more help, then you know where to find us. Okay? So big thank you for Marco and I, and take care, guys.
Take care.